Well, as I mentioned before, I think we're very fortunate here in Baylor County that we have a group of judges that are willing to think outside the box. You know, historically, judges were thought of as people that threw the book at someone that was charged with a crime and sent them off to prison if it was a felony, or off to the local jail if it was a misdemeanor, for as much time as they believed was appropriate. And then you just waited till they did their time, and then they were released back into the community, not really ever dealing with the root of the problem, right? If for example, they had a drug addiction. Here, Bexar County, like some other counties, some other jurisdictions across the country, recognize that you really have to deal with the issue. And if drug addiction is the true demon, then what can the courts do to help deal with that? And so here, we're fortunate again that we have a group of judges that are willing to look for those kinds of alternatives. We have a felony drug court here in Bexar County, for example, that has been successful, that works in concert with us, with the DA's office. We, for example, will review applicants for the drug court, and if they qualify and they meet the criteria, then they can enter or they can apply and be accepted into a pretty intensive program. And it's not a cakewalk by any stretch of the imagination. They've got some strict requirements that if they meet at the end of it and they successfully graduate from the drug court, then there's some benefits at the end of the rainbow, as they say. It may result in a conviction, it may result in avoiding a conviction. Plus, hopefully along the way, they'll get some much needed treatment in order to beat that demon. And so, again, we're very fortunate we have those judges that recognize that sometimes that's a route that should be taken. Mm-hmm. The drug court here in Bexar County is it's one type of what's called a specialty court. We have several types of specialty courts here in Bexar County, including, for example, we have a veterans treatment court that looks specifically at veterans and the issues that they may have connected with PTSD, for example. Sometimes they have demons of their own that they have to fight. And so, again, the courts recognize, law enforcement recognizes, we recognize that sometimes veterans have issues that should be addressed. Mm-hmm. And so that's another type of court that offers alternatives to incarceration. And so there's other programs, for example, the Esperanza Court that deals with issues where people may have problems in the past with prostitution cases. So that's another type of specialty court. So again, it's all the recognition in the system of trying to come up with alternatives to incarceration. Right. And you mentioned domestic violence. I mean, we could have a whole discussion on just domestic violence. Maybe really sometime the next time in the future, we can sit down and talk about. It's got its own special issues. Really but again, how we get involved in the domestic violence prosecution side is when someone is arrested and potentially charged with committing some sort of act of violence against their significant other, whether it be a spouse or someone they're dating, or maybe a member of their own household. But there may be, again, underlying problems. Sometimes it's alcoholism. Sometimes it's, again, drug addiction. Maybe it's just anger management. Maybe it's because they've lost a job and they take it out on their spouse. One of the things that we haven't talked about is how unique this whole COVID situation has created I think it's going to spawn a whole new number of cases that are just waiting to be prosecuted. We know, for example, while victims of crime were sheltering in place with their abuser, that has created an uptick in the number of domestic violence cases that we're going to have to deal with when we all come back to court and can handle these cases safely. We know that there's going to be an increase of those cases that we're going to have to deal with.
What are we seeing in terms of crime and COVID-19, and those that are related to domestic violence, mental illness, how is that working right now with something as difficult and unprecedented as COVID-19?
Well, depending on who you talk to, you'll hear different versions about whether or not we have seen an increase or a decrease in crime. But I will tell you that during this pandemic, we have still seen a steady flow of violent crime. I mean, just over the weekend, we saw some examples of violent crime. There was an incident where people were injured at a flea market. And we certainly have seen other instances where people have been injured or in some cases even murdered. There was a situation not too long ago where an 11-year-old had ultimately died from her injuries. And so we continue to see violent crime. What we've seen is that during this pandemic, the police are still having to do their job, right? They're still having to go out there and respond to calls. They're still having to investigate. They're still having to make arrests. We are still working at the magistrate's office. We have a 24/7 operation, and it doesn't stop. It hasn't stopped, and so we continue to operate. What happened during COVID is the courthouse had to stop its operation. We haven't had criminal jury trials, so I guess in sometime late February, and we're now continuing to be at a standstill. I think the last order was we're not going to come back until September 30th at the earliest, in terms of expecting to go to trial in criminal cases. So that means those people that have been sitting in jail awaiting their day in court. Victims of crime have been waiting for their day of justice. And so all that, the old saying, justice delayed is justice denied. But we have to do it in such a way where we don't expose people to being
this is a safety issue.
Absolutely, it's a safety issue. So we're just going to have to wait, and hopefully again we'll get back to business, and we'll get back to doing what we need to do. But one of the things that I'm telling the community is the district attorney's office has continued to operate. I started sending my people home in sometime in mid-March, when we knew the pandemic was going to be a problem, and so about 75% of our people are working from home because they have the ability to do that. They have laptops, they have other electronic devices, and those people that have to come to work have been coming to work. For example, one of the things that I want to make sure people understand is that the unit that handles protective orders is fully operational. You can call us and we can process your protective order application over the phone. We now can do it virtually by having you apply. I think it's BexarCountyProtectiveOrders.org, and you can actually fill out your entire protective order application without having to come down in person. So those are examples of some of our departments that have continued to operate even during this pandemic.
And if somebody needed to, in what cases would someone need a protective order, or would somebody apply for a protective order? Well, what situations?
Sure, you definitely want to seek a protective order in a situation where someone has been a victim of domestic violence, where someone has been assaulted, where someone has been choked, kicked, punched, any of those types of injuries. But you also don't want to wait for that. If you feel like there's a potential for future harm and the person has made a threat, don't wait until you actually get assaulted, because it may be too late. So you
listen to that, you all. Listen to what the Honorable Joe Gonzales is saying to you. If you need a protective order, your district attorney's office is still there for you. We may be in the middle of a pandemic. Your safety is of the utmost importance to them. So call them, log on to their website. You can still receive that protective order that you need.
And as I mentioned before, even those people that may be sheltering in place with their abuser, it's not a either or situation. You don't have to put up with that kind of abuse because you're staying at home for health reasons, or to avoid your children or you contracting COVID.
Or because you've lost a job during this pandemic. None of that is a reason to continue to endure abuse.
Well, that's right. And one of the things that I would suggest you do, if you can, if is try and reach out to someone, reach out to a family member, reach out to a close friend, or reach out to the next door neighbor, and let them know that how you're doing. And if you're not doing okay, they can get help for you. One of the things that might be helpful is if you are being a victim of crime, try and remember dates, try and remember events. Obviously, if you can somehow gather evidence, for example, if the perpetrator uses a knife or a gun, try and hold that for evidence in the future. But definitely get yourself out of that situation and reach out to somebody for help.
We have some great organizations here in San Antonio that you can reach out to, women's shelters. The district attorney, the Honorable Joe Gonzales, has been here talking with us, and I want you to come back and listen some more because we're going to delve into cite and release and some of the other things that the Honorable Joe Gonzales is doing and the district attorney's office in order to interpret our laws and help our citizens remain safe in a time where we've all been feeling a little bit unsafe. You're listening to On the Record with Tiffany. Yay! I'm getting better at the ending part.
You're no pro at this.